Hi everyone, Amy Copeland here with technically the first shrink plastic card that I made using Lawn Fawn products and Shrinky Dink's shrink plastic. I did the video for the peas, which I made second before I finished this video. I started out with a piece of bright white Shrinky Dink's plastic, and I used a sanding block to sand the smooth surface of that plastic. I sped up the video really fast here, and I'm sorry I didn't realize I was cut off there, but I used my Misty to stamp the watermelon using Stays On ink, and now I'm using Prismacolor's colored pencils to do my coloring. Now keep in mind, when you're coloring shrink plastic, everything darkens when you shrink it. So I did a pretty light coat of crimson red for the rind. I used pink rose. For the lighter green, I used Prussian green, and then I made the little squiggly lines with dark green. Watch my other video where I made the mini peas for a better technique for heating up that shrink plastic. I did still use my heat gun and that little ramekin, but it works best when you put it face down in the ramekin and then apply gentle pressure with the wooden stylus and heat it. And then when it flattens out, you know that the shrinking is finished. There you saw me cutting a panel from Mermaid cardstock and Noble Fur cardstock, both by Lawn Fawn, with the large stitched rectangle stackables die. And then I used the grass piece from the mushroom border die to cut out the grass. Here I'm using my Amazon ink blending brushes and the MFT mini cloud stencil to ink blend the clouds. And now I'm using Noble Fur ink just to darken the top of the hillside. I took a piece of Post-it tape and I'm sticking it to the back of that grassy panel to get any little cardstock scraps off for a cleaner edge. And now I'm using my Misty and Lawn Fawn jet black ink to stamp the watermelon 4 times onto Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock, and the ant with that same ink. And then I'm going to use Copic markers to color in the watermelons. It's been a while since I did this card, but I think I used R24, R27, and R29 for the red, and then R20 for the rind, and then for the green part of the rind I used, I think, YG03 and G19. For the elephant, which is from Elfie Selfie, I used warm grays. I believe it was W3, W4, W5, and W6. And then I also used that R20 on the cheeks and inside the ear. And then I color over it with my lightest warm gray. If you don't like to watch people color, you can skip ahead to 8 minutes and 9 seconds. I'm not an expert at Copic coloring. Eventually, I'd like to take a class to better learn how to do my shading and highlights. I do love the way the Copics blend, and you don't get the lines showing your coloring. At one point, I know I go a little bit outside the line when I'm using the red, and so I'll take my colorless blender and push that color back as much as I can, and then I use my heat tool to dry that area, because I've found when I don't do that on the reds, it still will bleed out where the colorless blender ink is still wet. I did my base coat with the R24. This is the R27. And then I'll go in and do the R29 and then go back over the entire red section of the watermelon with the R24. Finishing up the little light pink area with the R20. And then here's the base coat of the green. Again, I think it is YGO3, but I can't really see what it says on the screen there. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. And then once I get to the darker lines, I just do kind of a little squiggle all the way around. And then I'll bring in the coordinating dies and cut those out. Obviously, I'll have to run the watermelon through 4 times because I only have 1 die for the watermelon. I can't remember, but I think I might re-stamp my ant because the die cut white border was a little bit uneven. And I'm a perfectionist, so that bothers me. Yep, here I go. Reline that die and die cut that out, and I like that one better. Here, I haven't adhered the grassy piece yet, but I've taken that sentiment from Elfie Selfie. It says wish big, and I'm using Peacock ink to stamp that. And then I'm taking an anti-static powder tool and the sentiment from Seahorse and Around. I cut the IC words off. You can always realign that back the way it was intended. And stamp that with Versamark ink, sprinkled on Lawn Fawn white embossing powder. Used a little paintbrush to get the excess off of the Wish Big because it was still wet. And then I heat set that. Now I'm using Tonic Nuvo Deluxe Adhesive to stick everything down. when I get to the watermelon slice, the mini one that the ant's going to be holding, I'll take that sanding block and sand the slick surface off of the back of the watermelon, and then I'll use a strong 1/8 inch double-sided tape to adhere that. And then I'll make a card base, A2 sized, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 out of the Nina 110-pound cardstock. I should at some point just make a bunch of card bases. I'm using my Teflon bone folder there to really emphasize the crease. And I had a little bit extra, so I'm cutting that off. And then using the same tonic adhesive to adhere my card front to the card base. I really appreciate you watching and commenting and subscribing and thumbs upping my videos. I'll see you next time.